Parents, if you see this, I love you so much. Hi honeys, I'm Alice B. Wilder and welcome to another episode of the Naked series. In this episode, I am talking about parental advisory. And really what I mean is, how have my parents been dealing with my project this whole time? It wasn't until I was a few months into this project in 2020 when I even mentioned to my parents that I was working on Genital Electric. And at the time, I shared with them my genital portraits that I had done so far. I think I had maybe like 8 vulva portraits at the time, and I shared with them the purpose of the project and why I was doing it. And initially, they were super supportive. My mom even went so far as to say, like, I can imagine you talking on late night talk shows about this someday, like, this is really cool. And while they were super supportive at the beginning and wanted to support me in my artistic endeavors, that has changed slightly throughout the project. And while they're still supportive of me and my project and my art and all of that, as they have been throughout my life, there have been issues with the ways that I have approached this project that push their boundaries and that make them feel uncomfortable. So that has been something that we've had to talk about and deal with throughout the whole process. At the beginning of the project, when I told them about it, they were super supportive. My dad was like more concerned about the differences between the vulva portraits versus anything that I did that was more erotic or sexual, that had more body context and contour to it, because he felt like it lost some of the message, or it was just a totally different thing, which initially made me realize, like, there's this barrier with them with the sexuality part and the pleasure part of this project. So that was like something that really just became obvious to me and was very interesting. I kind of pulled back a little bit on certain parts of the project and explaining to them what was going on. And it wasn't until I was leaving on tour last year when I created the tour poster, and they were really nervous about that because of the way that it had my body contour on there with the neon vulva portrait, but it was still a cartoon of me, and they were nervous that it was going to sexualize me in a certain way, and they didn't want me to have that image out there. But I continued. I went on tour. I have the poster still. And while it made me like hesitant and it made me question whether or not I should have created that poster, I was still really focused on like what they thought of me and their expectations of me as their daughter. And I kind of had to like put some of that aside as I was working on this project. So I kind of pulled back more. I stopped telling them about stuff. They stopped asking questions. And it became more of like, I'll share certain aspects of the project, like the business side or the social impact of the project. But it's been a delicate balance, and I've had to approach certain conversations with them in a very delicate way, not to offend them, but also to push their boundaries and say like, no, actually, like, I'm doing this because of this. And I have a perfect example, actually. So only a few weeks ago did I let them know that I was working on this specific aspect of my project, the Naked series. And it wasn't met with excitement. It was met with hesitation. And I knew that it just made them uncomfortable to hear that I was doing this aspect of this project. But I addressed the discomfort with them and had a conversation with my mom about how and why I'm doing it this way, and what creating a video series of me talking about things naked in a raw format says about the topics and the taboo aspect of these things, and being able to like talk about these things without it being so difficult or censored even. And while my mom had a really hard time understanding, I was really happy with where we got in the conversation and even how I handled the conversation, because a lot of what this project has taught me is like the communication with them and being able to separate their expectations of me from my own expectations of myself and how I want to live my life. And that has been a really, really huge aspect of the project that isn't even like on the top level, like in the art. It's not even on the level of the art. It's all underneath, and it's all this kind of stuff that I talk about during these videos, which is just like the process and working through stuff in order to be able to do this project and to get to where I'm at today in my own understanding, my own sexual exploration, and to make that free from their expectations of me as a human. Now, my parents, like I said, have been super supportive of me in this project, even from the beginning. And that even looks like some financial support and kind of cheering me on in certain ways in helping me get the neon ready and together and made. And that has been huge. And just being there for me throughout this. I mean, it's been tough. I know that there are things that I'd love to talk to them about that they just couldn't handle or understand, but it's taken realizing what those things are to be able to manage that relationship with them and live my own life without their expectation. And understanding that we have a huge generational gap, and it doesn't mean that they're gonna understand my world and the way that I see the world, but that there is room for me to do what I'm doing without having to worry about their expectation and their discomfort and the things that make them nervous. I think that being an only child and having such a huge focus on me and my family and my relationship with my parents is one of the deepest connections that I have, but have also had to break down and understand like what things that I've learned growing up that aren't serving me in my own life, and realize like that there are differences in the way that they live their life and the things that they've gone through, whether it be religion or trauma or relationship issues or their own body image, that gets in the way of them understanding me and my process for this, but also realizing how their experiences have affected me in my life. The things that I've had to work through and understand a lot of times stem from the things that they brought me up thinking. And that may be like limiting beliefs, whether it's like having grown up with the Catholic father or like a more traditional view on relationships and education and sex even. And that has been something that I've had to really break down through all of this. Now, this isn't to say that my parents and I have a terrible relationship, because we don't. I mean, there are moments of tension and things that we have to work through and things that we wish and expect of each other that are different than what the reality is. But having worked through some of this over the last 2 years, it's given me a lot of tools to be able to have conversations with them, not get into fights, understand where they're coming from and their past, and recognize that like the parent to child relationship doesn't have to be based on their traditional idea of what that should be. I mean, even their expectation of me to live near them has been something that I've had to break down. And this is something that I picked up from Glennon Doyle reading Untamed. In my own life, I'd rather disappoint other people than disappoint myself. And if that means having to disappoint my parents once in a while in order to push myself forward and understand myself sexually or internally or mentally and emotionally, that I may have to disappoint them at times, but in order to move myself forward and become the person that I want to be in my life, not based on their expectations of what I should be or what being an adult looks like, because that's different for everyone. And I haven't come out of their traumas and their issues in my life. I'm dealing with my own set. So I think it takes recognizing that, and recognizing that parents don't have all the answers. They're just other adults too. So I'm going to keep trying my life as an experiment and see how it goes and make choices based on my own expectations and my life, but not based on theirs. And I think that has been a huge, huge lesson in all of this, is being able to live my life without disappointing myself. One last thing, parents, if you see this, I love you so much and I thank you for your support. That's it for this episode. I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Genital Electric, as well as on TikTok. And you can always check out my art at genitalelectric.art. And if you're interested in having your own vulva portrait made, please send me a message.